Hello, GRRA members, and happy March. Welcome to today's edition of our Real Talk podcast, the official podcast of the Greensboro Regional Realtors Association. And on today's episode, as always, we have GRRA CEO Mike Barr. We have 2026 GRRA President Bill Warmath. And today's March First Tuesday Luncheon guest speaker, Lydia McIntyre from the Greensboro Department of Transportation. Welcome all, and welcome, Lydia.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aidan.
Thank you. We're fortunate to be able to pick Lydia's brain with a few more questions. She did such a wonderful presentation at our luncheon today. Thank you again for all the information. This is going to sound very basic, but it was new news to me. Would you give a real quick, brief description of what the MPO is, please?
Very good question. The Metropolitan Planning Organization. These organizations exist to do transportation planning for urban areas with 50,000 or more populations. Right now in North Carolina, we have about 20. Here in the Triad, we have 4, including the Greensboro MPO. So the feds say, hey, if you're going to receive our federal dollars, we need to have an organization in place that does the technical analysis. And that's what we do at the Greensboro MPO, which covers most of Gifford County with the exclusion of Wisset and High Point, which is included in the High Point MPO.
And Lydia, you told us that you're a Wolfpack grad.
Yes. I did graduate from NC State many years ago in 1997. And then I also got my MPA Masters of Public Administration from NC State. And then actually got married and moved to the Triad.
Oh, that's awesome. When we're talking about funding projects, it sounds like it's pretty complicated. I know that Craig used to go into detail about, and Craig McKinney, for those who remember Craig, we came here for year after year to talk to us about the funding of the projects. Do you want to go over how the projects get funded? Because, there's a lot of work that needs to be done out there.
Sure.
And just want to know how the prioritization happens.
Yes, good question. It's very similar to at the local level where they have a CIP or capital improvement budget, and so with NCDOT they have something known as prioritization. Prioritization has existed. We're in the 8th round now, so this was a NCDOT moving from just discussing, reviewing projects with jurisdictions to a data-driven process. So we as the MPO collect that data, and we look at, the criteria the NCDOT has set out, and we select projects that we think would best compete under those criteria. The projects, when we do a long-range plan document that I mentioned earlier in the plan called the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, that plan is for 20 years, but it's for 20 years because it may take 20 years to get a project funded. And with NCDOT's prioritization project, we may submit a project 3-4 times before it gets funded or maybe gets partially funded. So the process does take a little bit, but it is data-driven now, meaning that the highest and best projects are getting funded across the state.
You mentioned, I know part of this is going to include federal funding on highways and that sort of thing. Now, do you also have to, present your plan or have things approved on a federal level or just the state level?
Very good question. We do. So like I talked about that long-range planning document, the feds are involved in that. I talked about the short-range document, the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, which was the one that shows the near-term projects in the next 10 years. The feds are in on that approval. So it's very close coordination between the MPO, NCDOT, and Federal Highway Administration.
So it's a sort of a coordinated effort, everybody theoretically pulling on the same end of the tug-of-war rope, correct?
Yes, and we're working together. Here in Gifford County, you have NCDOT Division 7. So those are the local state NCDOT folks in our area that we work with. Division 7 includes more than Gifford County, but they work closely with this MPO, Burlington Graham MPO, High Point MPO, but we're all working together to get our projects done. And it's close coordination. It doesn't start when the project is funded. We are coordinating with NCDOT on projects that we're identifying, projects that we're doing feasibility studies on or that they're doing feasibility studies on. Sometimes we'll get a project funded by NCDOT, but the city will do the implementation with the goal of getting it on the ground quicker. So there's always constant coordination along the project development process.
And so I know that the city has been focused on sidewalks, and some of us call them some sidewalks to nowhere. Can you talk about the process that's involved with deciding where a sidewalk goes? And is the goal to connect them eventually to something?
Yes, you may see, like when you talk about sidewalks and nowhere, it could be this development. So there are requirements with the LDO, land development ordinance. And with that process, it requires whether it's a major or a minor thoroughfare, possibly a collector, but primarily our major and our minors, where there are requirements to include those sidewalks. So you may see piecemeal because it came with development, and then the city coordinates to say, well, when can we go back in and fill that in? So when we think about sidewalks, they kind of come in different ways. They can come through development-driven. They can come through funding through NCDOT, which is not necessarily their primary purpose, but they do allow some state funding, not federal funding, for sidewalks, and then also through our bonds.
The discussion of bonds is always front and center with everyone. How is the allotment or the distribution of the funds, how is that prioritized, and who is sort of at the helm in that?
And with the Greensboro being our largest jurisdiction in the MPO, it has been very beneficial with the bonds. As I mentioned during the meeting, some of the projects are not 100% state funded. So it may be 80% federal dollars, and then it has to be a local match. So we're able to use those bonds to get more projects in the hopper. But those projects in terms of bonds are really it's council and the community. So what is the community really vocalizing to the council? But in the end, council, with the consultation of the city manager's office, makes those decisions where the bond funding. But certainly, we're always, from the staff perspective, advocating for support for our transportation projects. I also mentioned earlier how the MPO has a traffic safety action plan out right now, also known as the CSAP, or Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And this is a plan that's aimed at identifying strategies or projects that will reduce not all crashes, but fatal and serious injury crashes only. And with that plan, it's going to include strategies, which could be policy, but also projects. So we're hoping to get federal dollars for those, but also if there is an opportunity in the future for any bond projects also.
You're the person to call if a realtor has a question. So the best way to contact you.
Good question. Yes, Lydia McIntyre is the new Craig McKinney, and you can contact me. My phone number is 336-373-3117. I'll repeat that number one more time, 336-373-3117. Or you can email me at lydia.McIntyre, McIntyre, at greensboro-nc.gov. You always can look me up on the website, City of Greensboro, Lydia McIntyre. You should find my information, but certainly you can reach out to me if you have any questions.
You said you will make available your slide deck, and so we will put that in our hub and make sure our members know how to get to it. And that other information, I forget what the other information
The
was.
newsletter.
The newsletter, yes. Sign up for the newsletter, yes. So Lydia's taking over the newsletter, guys. So you really want to make sure you get to know Lydia.
Very good.
Looking at the itinerary of things that you all have on the drawing board right now, you've got some exciting times coming up, busy times coming up. So we look forward to hearing on the progress and how that branches out into different directions in different neighborhoods.
Well, our pleasure to serve you all.
Listeners, GRRA members, anyone listening today, thank you so much for joining us for this special edition of Real Talk with Lydia McIntyre from the Greensboro Department of Transportation. Lydia, again, thank you so much for your insights. And to listen to this edition of Real Talk, you can go to our YouTube channel. We will also be posting it on social media and sharing it in our tri-weekly news blasts. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.